Again, or
One more time, yeah.
let's see. My mother was Eleanor Beckwith, and my father was George Calvin Beckwith, and he died when I was 4 years old, and my mother tried very hard to take care of what he left behind, which was the Beckwith farm, her 4 children, and a dairy business and a fruit business and a furniture manufacturing business there was at the location at the farm.
The farm, is the farm the big house that's located on Stissing Road? The big white house with the barns? Is that, so that's the Beckwith homestead?
It's the second one. The first one is down the hill, and it's a salt box Revolutionary War period home that my ancestor Sylvanus Beckwith owned. I don't think he built it, I think he bought it. And at one time it was half the size, and it was increased or doubled in size. And it dates before the Revolutionary War.
Now, is that the house, if you're on Route 82 and you come to Stissing Road, the road that's two-way, you go in on Stissing Road and the house is like the second house, it sits up on the hill? Is that the house you're talking about? Or that I have the wrong location?
Wrong location.
Okay,
It's just below the large Beckwith
homestead.
homestead.
Is that, okay, is that then, I think the house is red now, it's painted red, and it's on the same side of the road as the homestead,
Yeah,
and it would be before the homestead if you're driving towards Cold Spring Road.
that's right.
And I think the people in the house possibly are San Filippo, San Filippo's own it.
Possibly.
I think
I
that might
don't-
be it.
I don't go there. It brings back all the memories. So I haven't been there in years.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh. But that's where Eleanor lived, in that big house, and that's the house you grew up in,
yes,
in that big house.
yes.
So, where did the Beckwiths come from? Sylvanus. Do you know where your Sylvanus?
He came from Old Lyme, Connecticut. And what happens is the families were inclined to be large, and the property that the family owned was small, and it couldn't contain a large family, so people moved away. And the original family moved to Dutchess County to a place out in near Endicott, New York, and to Long Island. So the only thing I know about the family that moved out to Endicott area was that they had a member that was named Sylvanus also. In both the Dutchess County Sylvanus and the one out in the middle of the state was both served in the Revolutionary War and they were by the same name.
What was Eleanor's maiden name?
Cornelius.
Cornelius. That's an old Stanfordville name too. Cornelius.
Yeah, she was born up on Bangor Amenia Road, where the farm next door was James Cagney's farm. And Cagney eventually bought the Cornelius farm.
I think that was it Henry Cornelius? I think Henry
Yeah.
Cornelius up around that way.
They had a large family, I think 8 or 9 children. And one of the boys was named Henry also.
Now, when you lived in Stissing in the old homestead, did you go to the school in Stissing or did you come here for school?
I came here to school. When my father died, my mother had to get some type of income. So she was, before marriage, was a school teacher. So she got a job teaching school here in this building.
Oh, really?
And I was 4 years old when my father died. So I started first grade right in this room here. And I was 4 years old.
So when your mom came to work, she brought you with her?
She brought her whole family, except my younger brother, Roger. He was like 3, 2.5 or so. So she farmed him out every day. And I was farmed out until the school year started. Or no, that wouldn't be right. I was farmed out the end of the previous school year, and my mother would drop my brother and I off at some neighbor, and she would bring my other sisters to school with her, and she would teach school all day.
But Stissing, where you lived, Stissing was pretty busy when you were living in that area, because it had the train, it had a school, it had a store.
Yes.
It had all your businesses from your family. There just seemed, it was a pretty active hamlet.
Yeah.
So can you just talk a little bit about what the hamlet was like then, when you were growing up?
Well, there weren't too many families living there, but there was a lot of activity. Before I can recall, there was a large sawmill there, and it sawed lumber from the Stissing Mountain, and it was powered by the Wappingers Creek that went down through Stissing.
Okay. I'm just trying to think in my mind where the creek comes through, but the creek pretty much crosses Stissing Road across from the schoolhouse. It would be pretty much
Yeah.
between the schoolhouse and where the bus garage was.
Yes,
So that's the creek that would power the sawmill.
yeah, it was, Stissing was called Slab City in those days. And it burnt down. It was a horrific fire.
The whole hamlet burned, you mean?
No, the sawmill.
Oh, the sawmill.
The
Where was the sawmill?
it was up on the intersection of Mountain Road and Stissing Road, I guess they called it.
So kind of where Mrs. Holland lived up there, Rose Holland lived in a house on the corner there. So in that area where
Yeah.
Olive Shook and Rose Holland lived,
Yeah,
but that was a big fire. When did that burn?
well, it burned before I was born. I don't really know.
Yeah, no. So that was a big loss to that whole area when that burned. Boy, and they're lucky that didn't set the whole mountain on fire.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, that's the base of the mountain there.
yeah.
Wow.
So, I didn't attend that school there because my mother was teaching here at this school, so we all attended this school. And the little hamlet of Stissing had a general store, school. A lot of the people that lived there worked on the railroad. And the store burnt down.
The store burned too, huh?
Yeah,
Was that Ambler's? Ambler's store, or?
at one time it was,
It was Ambler's.
but it was not the cause of the, caused by the sawmill fire. It was a different one. I don't really know what happened, but it was burnt down purposely.
Actually, I read a newspaper article about that.
Yeah,
It's in the old newspapers about the fire at the store.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it was rebuilt and carried on for a number of years.
When you lived in that area, was Mrs. Pugh still around?
Yes,
She lived in the house on the corner.
yes, she did.
Yeah. And her husband, he was one of the founders, leaders of Dutchess County 4-H Beef Club. So
I never heard that.
her husband, he was brought here by Oakley Thorne to run the beef operation up at Briarcliff.
Yeah,
And then they ended up living in that house on the corner there in Stissing. Yeah, he was pretty famous for that. But what about the Hates? Like Irv and Eric Hates family too. You all would have been around the same age, and you know your parents would have been about the same age.
Irv and what was this? Eric were younger than we were, but we knew them, were friendly with them, and at one time before the Mid-County Highway came through, the road to Pine Plains started out at Lawson's farm.
On 82. The one, the Lawson, towards Stanfordville?
Yeah,
Okay,
there were two Lawson families.
right.
And anyway, it went through their farm up over the hill and came down by where Hates lived.
By their driveway, you mean, in there?
Yeah, and on into Stissing. When they built the Mid-County Highway, they cut that road off and went up by Mrs. Pugh's and so on. So
And went north from there. Where was the train track that came through Stissing? Like, where did the train come into Stissing from Stanfordville?
from Stanfordville, it came through Bull's Head Road, you know, where it goes off of 82. The train track went up through there and back of Lawson's, the first Samuel Lawson's farm.
Okay,
And then it came back towards the 82 highway and went on up through, and it missed a little town, a little hamlet of Stissing.
where was the train station in Stissing?
It was right in the center of the Stissing village there, next door to Hotelings. Went in front of the schoolhouse.
The train ran in front of the school?
Yeah,
Wow. And Hoteling's house, was that across from Ambler's, the store? Was that Hoteling's house?
yeah,
Is that where, what is Cash Hoteling? I think that was his name, Cash Hoteling, his family lived there?
yep,
So it was pretty much like the families that were in Stissing were your family, so it would be Beckwith, the Hates, the Hotelings. I don't know any other names of families that would, Pugh would be there.
yeah.
And, I don't, what other families were up there? Ambler, right? But that was before, actually before your time,
Yeah.
Ambler.
There were a lot of people that worked on the railroad that lived in the various homes in the area.
They had like rooms in the houses? They rented rooms in the houses?
Well, in some cases, some people rented the whole house, and there was a section gang, as they called them, which was based at Stissing, and they took care of the tracks north and south of the area. So those people that were in that section lived in the area, and they came and went. So I don't know their names.
Right. But the railroad actually had people housed in an area so that they could just take care of the tracks.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting, because we have a picture from the Historical Society of like a group of men working on the railroad. And now you're making me wonder if that's not from up around Stissing, maybe possibly that group of men that worked the railroad.
Well, I think that different areas had different crews. I think there was a crew at Stanfordville, a crew at Stissing, and a crew at Pine Plains.
And then they would just come down on the tracks and do what they needed. So were they like the crew that would like, when there were storms, like to get the tracks passable again? So they would, or if there was just general maintenance, those were the people that would take care of the tracks that way.
Yeah, well, in both cases, they were.
When you would go to school with your mom, how did you get to the school? Did your mom have a car?
Yes. Oh, yeah, she drove.
She drove.
Yeah.
From what I've always heard about your mom was like a real dynamic woman. She was a very strong,
Yes, she was.
woman.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what about the historian side of your mom? What do you know how she, what made her become the town historian?
Well, she was interested in history, and so that she just fell into
It was
it.
just a natural
Yeah.
thing for her to become. Yeah. I love her articles in the old Mid-County Marts when she used to do the fond recollections, and she used to write just little, every week when they published one of those, she would have a little story about something about Stanfordville.
Yeah.
She knew so much. She knew so much.
Before that, Mrs. Williams had a paper called The Bag,
Yep.
and my mother wrote in that also.
Yeah. We don't have the bag, but we have the Mid-County Mart
Yeah.
with her articles in it. So, I'm just trying to think of what else. Well, when you lived in the house, the old homestead, what did you do, like, child-wise? Like, what did you do to amuse yourself, or, wintertime, what did you do? And summertime, what did you do?
Well, we did a lot of different things, but my mother was very industrious, and she had a garden, and she grew vegetables and canned them. She would can at least 400 quarts of various fruits and vegetables and put them away for the winter. Of course, this was during the Depression, and money was tight, and we bought groceries at Mr. Freitenberg's store in the village of Stanfordville.
Where was that?
It's where the antique store is now.
So old Elvin's Market, that was Freitenberg?
Freitenberg's.
Huh.
Mr. Freitenberg was a very nice gentleman, and he would deliver groceries in his station wagon, and he would buy cucumbers from us for his store, but he wouldn't let us pick them. he insisted that he go out in the garden and pick them himself. So I'm not sure what that was about, but we had a garden that was at least an acre, and around the perimeter there was a fence with grapevines on it, and we would pick the grapes and make grape juice, can the grape juice, and we'd have it year round. And
So pretty much in the summertime, as kids, you helped your mom with the garden and the animals that you might have had?
Yeah.
Taking care of things like that? Where did you go, did you go swimming up in up in that area? Was there a pond or anything up there?
no, we swam in the Wappingers Creek. And there was a spot that was in back of our tenant house where the creek came down and the road crossed. There was a bridge there, and there were an area in the creek that was wide and fairly deep. We went swimming there. People came and washed their cars there. And on our farm, the wagons in the summer, the wheels would get loose, and the farm hands would put the wagon in the creek and let the wheels soak overnight to make them swell,
Wow.
to tighten them up.
And you would fish there too, if you went fishing?
Yeah, we would. We fished the whole Wappingers Creek on the farm there. It was quite a long stretch of creek that was within our farm.
On the property, like, what I'm kind of finding out right now is that some of the older houses have family burial grounds on them. Was there ever any type of like an old Beckwith cemetery on the homestead?
No, all the early Beckwiths were buried in the cemetery that is kind of in the bushes there at the beginning of Cold Spring Road.
The Baptist cemetery then?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Baptist cemetery they're in? Yeah.
So there's a Sylvania's mother and father are buried there. And that's an interesting story. During the Revolution, Sylvanus was here, and his parents were over in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and he got concerned about him, so he got a military pass from the authorities. I'm not sure what their name would be, but he brought his mother and father over to Dutchess County to be with him.
During the war?
Yeah, and they had strange names. One of them was Hezekiah. Can't remember what the other one was, but his mother brought a Windsor chair with her as the only belongings she was able to bring. And I have it.
You still have the chair?
Yeah,
Wow,
yep.
wow. That's quite the treasure.
Yeah. My grandfather can't think of his name, but when he retired, he got interested in family history, and he went around to all the relatives and retrieved anything that was family history.
Wow.
So
do you have that family history?
I have some of it. I've got the chair. I've got 2 sets of chairs and a lot of papers.
That's great, though, that you have that. So, I'm just trying to think what else was going on up in Stissing.
Well,
We lived up that way.
in the late 1800s, in New York City, they developed a plague down there, which was caused by unsanitary conditions. They didn't have the proper sewerage, and so what happened is that people were dying off with the plague, and a lot of the wealthy and merchants sent their families up to Dutchess County and the areas around to be away from the plague. So Dutchess County became a big area for what they called the borders. And what would happen is a merchant in New York City would send his family up here during the summer to get away from the plague. So our family got into that business of borders. So our house was a huge house, but in the front it was very luxurious, and the back of the house was very plain. So in the summer, our family moved to the back of the house where the doors were all board and batten, and the walls were whitewashed. And in the front of the house, it had very fancy millwork and wallpaper and oriental carpets on the floors and so on. And that was for the borders.
Did your mom have a name for the house? You know, like did she call the house any special name? You know, like some of the houses, like there was Pleasant Vale Farm or Maple Shade or one of those. But so it was just basically the Beckwith house.
Yeah, the Beckwith house, the Beckwith place, and when I was growing up, there still the tail end of the border business was kind of fading away. I remember a little boy that was there. He and his mother were staying, and the father called. We still had a telephone when you rang it, and said he missed his wife. Could she come down to the city for a few days? And see if our family would take care of the little boy. And so that happened. She caught the train and went from Stissing to Poughkeepsie, from Poughkeepsie to New York on the train. And the little boy, he missed his mother, so he decided he was going to go down to New York and find her. So we had a real emergency on our hand. The little boy,
It took off on you.
he took off. And we had our family, all the neighbors and everybody searching for the little boy. And we finally found him. He was up the road going towards Cold Spring. But for the time he was missing, he didn't get very far. But the families were really concerned about that.
Did you ever have anyone famous for the time stay at the house?
Not that I know of, but he and his mother were the last of our boarders. And I don't know much about the people that were before them.
Right.
But we had the home there was pretty much geared towards boarders, and we had a horse-drawn surrey with a fringe on top with leather fenders, and that was very, very fancy. That they used to meet the train or the train station and bring him to our house, and they used the horse block there to get the ladies in and out of the surrey, and we had electric generating plant in the basement of our house. So we had electricity, we had running water, and they had a big tank down in the basement and a pump that you pump back and forth to fill the tank and pressurize the tank so it would flush the toilets and so on. We had water and electricity, which weren't available to the public. And we had all sorts of games and equipment for the boarders. We had rocking chairs on the front porch, which extended the whole front of the house. We had croquet, badminton, lawn swings, hammocks, and on, all for the boarders to indulge in.
Yeah, they would come for the whole summer. Just be there the whole summer.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great. Was there, on the map that you drew, it shows that there was a walkway from Sylvanus Beckwith House to the train station. So you didn't have to walk on the road, you used to go through the woods? Is that correct?
Through the swamp. There was a swamp. And it was elevated. They have that type of a walkway down in Florida through different areas of marsh areas.
So they actually like built a walkway to go through the swamp?
Yeah, it was up on stilts. And to get to the train station, you had to walk on the road and went all the way around. And this path or walk went right through the swamp to the train station and to the store.
I wonder if any parts of it are still there. You know, it'd be interesting to see, to try to retrace it and see if any parts of it are still in there through the swamp.
There probably are. Last time I was there, which is a long time ago, there were still parts of it. It was built up on stilts, so you walked up above the bogs and the skunk cabbage and all the other stuff that grew.
On the map also, you have down by the railroad house, you have a Beckwith tenant house.
Yes.
Is that where the schoolhouse, pretty much where the schoolhouse is, or that was a different house?
Oh, it's a different building. It was, I think it originally had something to do with the train station. In other words, like a little hotel or something.
That's a fairly large house. That's the house on the corner. It's like a two-story house.
2-story, yeah.
So that was also Beckwith. Just going back earlier when you were telling me about the Sylvanus Beckwith house, I was always told that when you went in off of Route 82 onto Stissing Road, there would be Pugh's house, and then there's a house up on the hill. It's pretty dilapidated, it's falling down. Was that ever a Beckwith house? That wasn't.
Not that I know of.
So, see? Get told something and it's not true.
There was before the schoolhouse was built, there was another schoolhouse. And historians are trying to figure out where it was. And I remember years ago that if you went turned off Mid-County Highway into Stissing, on the left, there was kind of a driveway, and way back there was a building that was falling down. And I think that might have been the schoolhouse.
So that's kind of where Irv Haight's house is, like between Irv Haight's house and the store, in that area in there?
It would be beyond Irv Haight's house towards Mid-County Highway,
Toward the Mid-County Highway.
across the road from Pugh's.
So it was more on the corner, a bit more on the corner.
Well, on the corner, it's kind of swampy.
Yeah.
Then there's a rise, and up on that rise was an old building falling down.
So maybe that was the schoolhouse.
There's an interesting story there. Paul Harrison Sr.,
Was he the highway superintendent at one point, Paul Harrison? I wanna say that
that sounds familiar, but I'm not sure. Seems to me that he wanted to be, but he didn't get elected.
Okay.
But I'm not sure of that.
And Harrison lived in Stissing also?
He lived down the road across from the farm there.
On Mid-County Highway? you mean?
Yeah,
Like, what's their names? It's going towards Attlebury? The farm going towards Attlebury? Or the other way?
south,
South.
south.
So down towards Lawson's farm?
You
Lived
lost,
down-
yeah,
You lived down towards Lawson's farm?
yes.
So what's the story about Paul Harrison?
Oh, he had a garage he built. And the people that we sold that house across from the school to, can't think of their name now, but he was a writer. He wanted a garage, so Paul Harrison sold him this garage. It was a two-car garage, very wide. So he got it rigged up on wagons and trailers and towed it up to Stissing Road. And then to go into Stissing, there's a bank on one side and a bank on the other side. And he tried to go through it, and he got the garage stuck. So they had to get tractors and people to dig a bank out to get the...
Get the house, the garage through. So that garage is on that property today? I
Yeah.
wonder, it's gotta look, next time I drive there, I have to look for it.
Yeah,
Good story.
the schoolhouse in Stissing was built quite a bit by the people on the school board. One of the people was my ancestor, and I can't think of his first name, but anyway, he and his neighbor both were on the school board, and they volunteered to build the cupola to house the school bell.
Yeah,
So they did, and the other people on the school board had no intention of painting the schoolhouse. It was going to be just raw boards, which was a thing that was done in those days. But my great grandfather and his friend and neighbor, I can't think of his name, they painted it white. And so that made the rest of the board decide, well, they had to paint the rest of the schoolhouse to match the cupola. So, and then years later, many years later, they dissolved the school district.
right, yeah.
It merged into Stanfordville, which merged into Pine Plains. But anyway, they sold the schoolhouse and auctioned off the contents. And one of the contents was the school bell. And this was during the Depression. People didn't have a lot of money. So my mother bought the school bell for $4 at the auction. And she had it for years, and members of our family are all trying to get it from her. But they wanted it as a gift.
So you still have the bell?
Well, I bought it from my mother. And then at that time, I had an antique business. So I was interested in a bell as an antique. But then after I got it, I thought historically it's a shame to sell it to somebody, probably be from New York City or whatever. So I didn't sell it. So the schoolhouse was converted into a living house, and I think several people owned it. And then these people heard that I had the bell, and they were the parents of the people who were currently owned it. So they came and they asked if I would sell them the bell, which would go back to the schoolhouse, which I did. I sold them the bell. But I don't know what happened.
Where the bell went?
Yeah, the cupola over the bell, cupola was taken off to make it look more like a home. And
Right.
so I'm not sure what happened to it.